Hey guys, we're back. Looks like my rank has decayed to number 31 Mythic since yesterday making Mythic. So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, what I was looking at is preparing for the upcoming play-in tournaments. There's going to be, I think, one the second week of the month and then one the third week of the month as well. One I think is going to be traditional standard, and one is just regular standard. So, kind of with that in mind, since I feel most comfortable playing the mono red deck, which I think is quite strong, I had a look at a couple different builds for best of three, and this is kind of what I settled on for a sideboard. So, mostly on this channel I do best of one, but the whole point of it is to hopefully spike a win at either like a play-in, a qualifier tournament, maybe an arena open. That's kind of where this is all going. That's sort of the whole point for me, at least. And so I came up with a sideboard, sort of looking at a couple different decks. One card that seemed really to make sense is 4 copies of Lithomatic Barrage. This basically just is a hoser for blue or white, plain and simple. Deals with planeswalkers, deals with creatures, 1 mana, can't be countered, does 5 damage. Sign me up. So I've got 4 copies of that. I also have 4 copies of Twisted Fealty. This is, if you can't go above them, if you're up against like maybe green-black or like huge green creatures, big things you can't deal with, this could be good against like 5-color Reanimator. Atraxa, just grab it, win the game. So pretty straightforward there. If you can't take out their creatures, just grab them and kill them. This is also good on against mono black, against Shieldred, for example. Then we have the 4th copy of Urbrask's Forge. This really shines in the control matchups, so I'm very happy to be running 3 of them main board. This is exactly the list that I ran all the way through the ladder for best of 1, and then I just kind of adapted a sideboard here. The other 4 I've got is Witchdocker's Frenzy. This basically just deals with any kind of huge problem creature, Shieldred, Adeline, whatever you need to deal with. It's also great because it gets cheaper for every attacker, and this deck does a lot of attacking, or if you're being attacked, that also works. So pretty straightforward there. It's good in the mirror. The other card that I have specifically for the mirror is Invasion of Tarkir. This is also quite good against White Weenie. Basically, this is a card that I never want to see when I'm playing up against mono red. And it's a card that I want every time against mono red. So there's so many easy ways to get through and flip it, especially with Monstrous Rage, flying over with Godric if you need to. But sort of the plan here, just to kind of go through how you sideboard with this deck, and this is kind of a work in progress, so this might change. But for example, when you're up against the mirror, which I expect to be a decent number of matches, what you want to take out is 3 copies of Urbrask's Forge. It's just too slow for the mirror, plain and simple. 2 copies of Phoenix Chick and 1 copy of Feldon. These all can't block, and sometimes you need to block, and they're also kind of low impact. Feldon is okay, certainly, but Phoenix Chick is sort of like the 13th and 14th, 1-drops. So the plan there is to take out those 6 cards and then bring in 4 copies of Witchstalker Frenzy and 2 copies of Invasion of Tarkir. So you just bring in these 6, take out these 3, this 1, and these 2, and call it a day. Against Esper Control / Esper Legends / Esper Midrange, basically you want to bring in Urbrask's Forge, the 4th copy, and 4 copies of Lithomatic Barrage. And I think that might be it. Yeah, the problem with Invasion of Tarkir is that like they don't have a lot of creatures to kill. There are some, I suppose, with tokens and whatnot, but the problem here is that you don't want to leave this thing stranded with like a couple counters on it and you just can't finish it. So again, this may change. This is just my thought for now. You also probably want to consider bringing in Witchstalker Frenzy for Shieldred specifically. So there's sort of a lot of ways you can go here, and I don't know the exact what you want. You know, maybe it's better to bring in like Twisted Fealty, just like grab it and kill them. Frenzy deals with it. So, you know, potentially almost the entire board could be brought in, just depending on which cards work better. So this is going to be kind of a work in progress. Cards that I would maybe take out. So like against Esper Control, because they are different decks, certainly. Like Esper Control pretty much only has 4 copies of Wandering Emperor for its threats. Everything else is just dealing with all your nonsense. So there, for example, you don't need the Witchstalker's Frenzies. You want to bring in the Lithomatic Barrage and probably the Forge and just call it a day. What you would cut... You know, probably what you'd want to cut there are maybe like Monstrous Rage. You don't really have creatures that you have to, you know, beat. There's not many just creatures you're running up against. And definitely can be really rough, like especially if, you know, your card gets blown out by them having removal for your creatures. So maybe you cut like Rage, bring in Forge and Lithomatic Barrage, and like a 5th card, maybe cut like a Play with Fire. It's like the next lowest impact. You definitely want some of this stuff because you want to be able to like burn them out if they like totally wipe your board and have like a little bit of reach. But you do have some reach here with like Kumano Faces Kakazan, Epicure, and some of this other burn. So that's probably what I would cut in that matchup against Esper Control. Against Esper Legends or Esper Midrange, like they're very different decks. They definitely both run anywhere from 2 to 4 copies of Shieldred, Rafine, probably Denic. So you're going to want as much action as possible. Probably going to want all 4 Lithomatic Barrages and probably all your Frenzies as well. That one is more about like just taking control of the board and less about, you know, trying to get there with so like cards that are like a bit weaker in that match are probably Play with Fire. It just doesn't do that much, honestly. Like it doesn't kill Shieldred, it doesn't kill Rafine, it doesn't kill Denic. Lightning Strike does kill Denic, at least, so you probably leave those in. Yeah. I'm not really sure what else you want to cut there. It's going to be kind of a process to figure out, you know, what the weakest cards are, etc. It might honestly be Lightning Strike. I mean, again, like if you can take control of the board, you can just beat them with damage. So the other possible consideration would be Monstrous Rage, just because they're going to have all the removal under the sun. And so you probably, honestly, yeah, that's probably what you want to do, is you probably take out like Play with Fire and Monstrous Rage, because connecting with your pump is just very unlikely to actually happen. And then you could, I guess, potentially bring in like another Forge, maybe even Twisted Fealty. So if you're looking for even more cards to cut, potentially like cutting the Phoenix Chicks. Again, they're just sort of, they don't do as much. They run into Flying Denic when it's been like recast from the graveyard. They run into Rafine, Yeah, so they're not as kind of high impact. So probably some permutation of those cards is what I would cut for that matchup. Against like the World's Golgari green-black deck, that's going to be a deck where you're going to want to bring in Frenzy for sure, all 4 copies. You probably are going to need the Twisted Fealties there. Forge is also great just because it has inevitability. Possibly, actually, Invasion can do some work. Flying over their stuff actually is kind of a thing. And this does take out like their 3/2 for 2. I can't remember the name of it, whatever it is. Comes back from the yard. So there are a couple things you can kill with Invasion of Tarkir. So maybe you bring in something like 4 Witchstalker Frenzy, 2 Invasion, some number of Twisted Fealties, possibly the Forge. Again, I'm not really sure what you want to cut here. Again, you're probably going to want to cut Rage just because being able to connect to your target is less likely after they board in all kinds of removal. So maybe cut that. Play with Fire is really limited on what it actually kills. Notably, this does kill Glissa, and they are running, I think, 3 copies of that. So, yeah. I don't know if you want to leave in some of them or just cut them all. I think Lightning Strike does more, but again, like Frenzy is going to deal with everything, so it's a work in progress. But that's kind of like a general idea of what you're doing with that matchup. Other major matchups. So against like Selesnya Enchantments, which is not as much of a deck anymore, but it's still a contender for sure. Probably what you want to do there, you're going to be bringing in Lithomatic Barrage. That should deal with most of their like big boom booms. And if you're, I guess if they haven't like played other creatures yet, like the little 1/1 green creature that gets counters, you can still kill it with Lithomatic Barrage, so that's pretty good. That's a deck where you don't really have time to play Forge. It's just too fast, so you're going to probably want to cut the Forges. Again, maybe Feldon. Phoenix Chicks are nice because they do fly over, so that's worth considering. But if you're looking for extra cuts, maybe it's kind of a little bit kind of lower on the totem pole. I think you definitely want to bring in like the Invasion of Tarkirs, the Witchstalker Frenzy. Probably you're just going to want to bring in as much removal as possible. Like Fealty, you probably don't need as much. I mean, you can, I'm sure, steal wins off it, but yeah. Frenzies, Barrage, Invasion of Tarkir, you pretty much just want to kill everything they play, if you can. And then, like, win with, I don't know, like a Godric or something. Against White Weenie, similar deal. You pretty much just want to, like, kill all their stuff. Forge is really bad in that matchup because, again, it's too fast of a match. So you're going to want to bring in the Lithomatic Barrages, the Witchstalker Frenzies, probably the Invasions. I'd probably cut something like Forge. And wow. Probably, I mean, maybe Rage. Like, Rage is okay there. The only real, like, instant speed interaction that they have is Iganjo. So that's a consideration. But other than Iganjo, like, they don't have a lot of instant speed. Most of it's sorcery speed. You know, they're going to have possibly, like, Glass Casket maybe, or they'll be using the 2-mana enchantment to exile something, or, like, Werefox. I suppose Werefox is instant speed. So if they're using Werefox and not Brutal Cathar, then maybe Monstrous Rage is, like, less good. So I could see cutting those. Like, you definitely need to find some cuts. So maybe just cut, like, Rage, Forge, Probably Feldon because again it doesn't block. And probably the Phoenix Chicks. That's 10, so that looks good to me. And then just bring in like 4 Barrage, 2 Invasion, and 4 Frenzy, and just like burn everything in sight. Other major decks. Mono Black. So against Mono Black, definitely want Witch Doctor Frenzy for their Shieldreds. Tarkir is kind of less good. I mean, it's okay. I guess it can get like Liliana, which is worth noting. If like Liliana has already done something. Flipping it might be kind of hard though because they've got so much removal. So like you could definitely walk yourself into like bad situations where you like do some damage to it but you don't actually finish it and then it's just kind of awful. That's another deck where you're going to want probably the 4th Forge. They don't really have a good way to deal with artifacts. They're decently quick, or they can be, but they're not like super fast, where I think like you will probably get mileage on Forge. So I think Forge is probably okay there. It may also depend like if you're on the play or if you're on the draw. Like if you're on the play, Forge is probably fast enough. If you're on the draw, maybe still. Like the nice thing is it's a threat every turn, but because like you're definitely going to be in a situation where they're just going to be killing all of your stuff. So Monstrous Rage is probably bad. Play with Fire just doesn't do that much. Like it's okay, but it doesn't kill that much. So maybe cut like Play with Fire, Monstrous Rage. And maybe like a Feldon and a Phoenix Chick or something. I'm not entirely sure. Or you could bring in like 4 Frenzies. Maybe the 4th Forge. And then 4 Twisted Fealties. That might be too many. I don't actually know if you want to bring in all 4 of those. But I mean, grabbing their, like if it's mono black and they're going with like the 6/6 flyer, whatever his name is, that's a great card to grab. Great against Shieldred. It's great against if they're running the what's it called? The Obliterator. It's great against that. So it seems like a good match to bring that card in. Anyways, I just wanted to give you guys kind of a little bit of a primer. I am going to start probably casting some best of 3 standard events. So the first plan is going to be just like a regular standard event. So it's not best of 3. But I think getting in the habit of the best of 3 could be worth it, since the actual qualifier, if I can qualify, will be best of 3 standard. So I'm just going to look at kind of like time considerations there, because I mean, you could potentially, if we're looking at a traditional standard event, I mean, you could potentially have 15 separate games if it goes to 3 games every single match, and you've got 5 rounds, so that could take a long time. I might do some just like regular standard events, so you're looking at like a maximum of 9 games, but yeah. Anyways, this video, I just wanted to kind of go over some of this stuff. In the next video, I will actually start casting events, but yeah, very excited, looking to get qualified here and hopefully do well in standard. This is the first time that there's been a standard qualifier in a little while, so standard is definitely my favorite format. When we're moving into like other qualifier seasons, maybe if it's like a limited one, we'll do some more limited and some more drafting. But I think just kind of figuring out what this is, like I'm going to want all that time to prepare and really just go deep. And I tried tinkering around earlier today I like put together an Esper list and just tried it out in a one of like traditional events, and just it's there could be some value in like seeing it from the other side of the table, but I think that I just have so much more experience with mono red aggro that, and it's also more of kind of my play style. Very fast aggressive decks is what I love, so we'll see. But anyways, thanks guys for watching, and we will check back with you soon.